Welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor, my YouTube channel. And I've been working with the figure at the studio these past several weeks. We've been working from a cellist. You may have seen some of the earlier videos of Elena the cellist. Today we're working with Olga, who's a flamenco artist. And she's going to be posing for us in some of the traditional poses, dancing for us while we sketch, and bringing us a variety of costume that the flamenco artist wears. I wanted to show you just some preliminary things that were done while Olga was moving, and these sorts of studies are really useful because you're concentrating on a major movement of the pose. You have no time to do it. You have to really kind of memorize the scene and then perform it. It helps to use a single color like I'm using here, and it actually is very helpful to work from such a short amount of time. It forces you to concentrate on the bigger movements in the pose and to really edit the things which are necessary and important to the expression, and leave out a lot. So you can see several poses that Olga was performing while we were sketching, and I think these indicate the sort of freshness and the sort of vital impression of the dancer. In addition to that, the artist is always doing sketches, pencil sketches. These were done on my iPad using a program called Sketches for the iPad. I find it very fast, and I like the fact it's illuminated. I can work in dark areas and build it up as I would with a pencil and eraser. And also it has a watercolor feature that I enjoy using too. So it hasn't replaced the sketchbook for me, but it is very convenient. This is Olga, and she's in a pose that is representative of what they call Palmas, where the artist is sitting and waiting to perform, keeping a sort of rhythm, creating a percussion with the hands. It's called Palmas. And that's my focus in today's demonstration, is to recreate that focus on her hands, and at the same time the beauty of the pose and the beautiful attire that Olga's wearing, and combine it with a dramatic light to create the sensation that it's a quiet moment for the flamenco artist, because they're concentrating, anticipating their dance, and still keeping a rhythm going with their own hands. This work will be done with a couple of washes, a couple of stages I should say, where I'm building up the color with an underpainting. I want to give some warm hues and counter that with some cool hues, focusing on the white that I'm going to be leaving through the dress and through part of the hands. And I like this stage because it's very fluid. I'm not really concerned much except for getting a sort of flow to the figure. Sometimes I work conscious of the drawing that I've done. Sometimes I move beyond that. In this case, simple complementary hues of blue and orange, kind of setting up the undertone, or the colors that are going to shine through the final painting. And then this is left to dry, and then I start to work on dry paper, really conscious of edges at this point, especially around areas that I want to focus on. One area that I want to focus on is the hands, Olga's hands. And so I'm kind of starting with this big background wash, trying to create a graded feel from top to bottom, so that there's a nice transition. I'd like it to happen right where the hands are kind of extending into the lighter part of the gradient. That's my strategy anyway. And I continue to build this wash. I've got my paper at an angle of about 30 degrees so that the color is going to continually flow downward, and it'll blend in a natural and gentle way, and it'll come to rest on these very strong hard edges. So the combination of a soft transition behind and dramatic sharp edges with a high amount of contrast creates the energy and the enjoyment in this painting. And I build this wash with the idea that, you know, it's going to remain sort of a mid-tone, and that mid-tone then is going to be moved into the shirt and into the dress to, again, focus on that forward edge, the strong forward edge that is receiving the light from above. Olga's been posing for us for about 3 years now, which is, for the artist, for myself, I feel is a real plus, because I've gotten to know her body language. I've gotten to know a lot of about flamenco through conversations and through Olga's her experience with the dance, and she speaks to us and tells us what some of the poses are indicating, what the artist is thinking with any one move, how the costume is important too, to express a certain feeling, a certain mood with flamenco. Sometimes it's very colorful, very festive. In other cases, it's very sublime, very quiet and inward. And Olga is very capable expressing all of these different facets of the dance. It's really opened up an interesting visual aspect to me of the flamenco artist. So you can see now I'm very much concentrated on the brushwork. The dress that Olga is showing us today is just magnificent, with all of the fabric kind of cascading in layers across her lap and legs, and it's complemented by this beautiful white blouse that she's wearing. And that's very much asking me as the artist to think about how light is moving across the fabric and the beauty that creates. Of course, I'm trying to be very brief with my strokes, especially when it comes to bear on these luminous areas. I want it to express the movement across the elbow or the shoulder or the hip. Same time, I want to preserve the luminosity within the material itself. It's going to be important, the final stage, when I come to painting the hair and painting the shadows on the dress, to express that luminosity. You can see the underpainting is working for that effect too. There's a nice warmth behind the figure. The blue that was painted in the dress originally is very luminous, and it's working out better than I expected. So this sometimes happens with watercolor, where you get a passage that was a little spontaneous and not overly controlled, and it works out in such a positive way. This is the part of watercolor that excites me the most, where watercolor is doing at least half of the work, and my job is many times to stay out of the way, to let it happen and just continue to move on through the painting at a pace that doesn't allow for reworking or correction. So you see, it's in a very luminous state right now, and I'm working on a difficult passage at the moment, which is to express a complicated pose with the hands. I'm trying to keep it simple, and by that I mean one color and painting the fingers as a silhouette, a dark silhouette. I'm conscious of how the fingers are bending, how the pinky is extending, and the palms are coming together. But I'm trying to avoid the detail. I have in my mind that I can return to this shape and distinguish the upper palm a little more with highlights towards the end, and push back the palm behind with an indication of dark. But at this stage, I'm guessing a little bit. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible with a single color, and as I said, concentrate on the join shape. This sort of strategy has worked for me before, and I feel it'll. I have a little bit of faith that it'll work out in the end. Right now, it looks like just a splash of paint, but as it dries and as I add those details of darks and lights, you'll see some separation, and it'll feel a little more natural. That's an important comment, I feel, is that the artist almost always experiences a moment of despair in the painting where, oh, it's not going as I planned, is this painting going to be lost, is it worth continuing? By all means, I feel I have to continue, because it's really only 3/4 of the way. There's still plenty of time to get a good result. There's also plenty of time to lose the painting, but keeping a sort of optimistic idea, an optimistic attitude as you're working through this is really good, and keeping that forward momentum. If you find yourself kind of obsessing of one area, you definitely need to step away and take a breather, come back to the painting, see the painting from a distance, see the larger movement of shapes and objects, and then come back, because that will eventually hurt the painting if you really concentrate on only one small part, even if that part's important. Keeping a flow and keeping the brush moving, stepping back from your work once in a while. These are all very useful techniques in developing a watercolor. Probably developing any painting, not just a watercolor, but any painting, any media. Seeing it from a distance definitely helps, because it focuses on the larger shapes and the larger passages, and you can see how things are working. You might see also how an area where things are not working or not contributing to the overall design. Well, as this painting is drying, it's really starting to become a pleasing work. I feel that we need some more shadows, perhaps some more cools in the face area, but the structure is there, so it's a little easier to place. The hands are drying in a positive manner, and I feel that my patience and my persistence are being rewarded. I can see it now coming to a conclusion in my mind's eye, and that tells me that just to finish with some small things, not anything major. In fact, sometimes I'll give the painting a day or two on the shelf and look at it and question, should I do this, should I add this? This is the finished piece. Palmas, Olga's doing the Palmas. That's the reason for the title. The highlights on the hands really bring them into focus and complement the passage of light across the front of the body. I hope this painting was helpful, and I hope that you continue to work with figures in all sorts of situations. It's a great exercise and a great way to express the various aspects of different art forms.